Hello, you've reached ChristianApologist.com, and I'm S.J. Thomason, and today I'm going to present to you 11 questions that atheists cannot answer.
Hi there, Sudge, if that even is your real name. How are you doing? And oh look, questions atheists can't answer. Again, how wearily hilarious. An idea that is not only stupid because of course any answer is an answer, even if you don't happen to like it, but even if somehow the questions were impossible to answer, say they inflicted selective mutism on the person hearing it, that wouldn't magically make anything you decided was true, because the opposite of not having an answer is not the same as having all the facts ever.
The first question, how do you explain why the early Christian martyrs preached for decades saying they saw the risen Christ?
Damn, opening with the tough questions. Tough not to immediately rip into for being hilariously vague and useless. Loads of ways. 1, they're full of it. 2, they believed things that weren't true because they were deluded, dumb, or crazy. 3, it's not true, and the stories about them are just that, stories. Really, it's just take your pick. There are tons of reasons why someone might do that. Many, if not all of them, are better than there's totally a real god man who told them to do it with mind powers and weirdly specific cloning technology.
2, how do you explain the rise of Christianity to between 5 and 6 million by 313 when it was finally legalized from such humble roots?
Of course, you've got to throw in an argumentum ad populum. I mean, we all know that if something is popular, that automatically makes it good, true, and correct. Of course, then you have to ask, how popular does it need to be? I mean, according to you, not much. A few million is enough to make something completely valid. I wonder how many atheists there are in the world. But seriously, of course, when a thing that was illegal, once made legal, had a lot more people trying it out, at least in a more public way, is going to happen. And as an ideology, which are effectively designed to be spread, the notion that it would in fact spread proves nothing other than that's a thing that religions can do. Sometimes they spread a lot, most of the time they don't because something is usually already in that position. But that still doesn't make it correct.
3, what powered inflation of the universe?
Your mum's ass. Sorry, that was extremely immature of me. Your dad's ass. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop. And seriously, I don't know, and I don't have to know to think that your claim of Godmans is a very silly answer to that. But there are some possibilities that sound plausible, like with a cyclical universe. There is no need for it to be powered per se. Instead, that it's just a thing that the universe does over and over again, collapsing in and expanding out possibly forever. No less plausible than a guy did it with his magic. But it does have the added benefit of not adding a bunch of stupid shit about what that guy wants, needs, and feels about you touching yourself.
4, why are humans spiritual?
Because they're really dumb. Lol. But again, in the serious boys, you know that you're kind of missing the chicken and egg of it all. You think, well, God do the real, that why humans be the spiritual. But humans being spiritual is a really strong reason that they might make up gods to fill in that not necessarily rational gap in their heads. I mean, humans also think they see faces in clouds. That doesn't mean that there are these giant cloud guys playing frickin' peekaboo with humanity. You know, except for Steve. That guy is always screwing with you little assholes.
5, where did consciousness come from?
Your mum's up. Oh, I can't use that one again, can I? Also, it's super obvious where it comes from. It's head meat. Seriously, I will never understand why people are so weird about consciousness, as if it's mystical. It's just something that happens inside people's heads. We can scan it and measure it to some degree. If you break the head, it stops working. If you keep the body alive without skull jam, the person will never be as they were. If it wasn't stored in there, none of that would happen. Hell, I'd bet dollars to donuts that if you could rebuild a brain to functionality, you may perhaps get a living person again, but never the same one, because it isn't some kind of universal personality receiver, but more of a big squishy memory card. It's impressive, yes, but there's not a damn magical thing about it.
6, how do you explain what some have called our sixth sense?
Our sixth sense has got to be one of the funniest things that a theist has ever said to me on this channel. People colloquially refer to a sixth sense, to describe a plethora of different feelings and phenomena. The fact that you didn't know that is funny enough, without the fact that humans already have many more senses than the commonly understood ones of touch, smell, taste, hearing, and sight. From the very obvious ones like balance to things like air pressure or bodily awareness. You know, like how you tend to know where bits of your body are without looking, hence the popularity of Beat Saber. In fact, there's up to 30 plus distinct senses humans have. So how do you explain all of those? Oh, that's right. You almost certainly can't because you're an idiot. No, I can tell. I sensed it.
7. How did the Earth overcome what MIT and Stanford physicists call statistically miraculous odds to have habitable conditions?
Well, first off, why are you being so cagey with the names of the people who said that? Could it be that you're making that up? Or that at least it's so witheringly few of them that to point to one or two out of the overwhelming many more who don't would make it sound like you're a moron? And okay, fine, let's say all of them do. So what? Something having a statistically insignificant chance of happening is not the same of it being impossible. Especially when it comes to universal things, where something unlikely to happen happens incredibly regularly because of just how much stuff is in the universe. The same way how many people play the lottery, so it goes from unlikely to an individual to essentially guaranteed to happen to someone over and over and over again, as it always does. Spooky.
8. Why does humanity cherish humility and honesty over pride and deceit?
Why do people prefer things that make the world better over things that don't? I am a very smart person with a functioning brain. The real question is, why does humanity seem to cherish beliefs come to via utter irrationality over basing your opinions on things that can actually be demonstrated? Because that one often leads to very poor outcomes that are bad for people, like the overwhelming box office success of the Transformers franchise. The hell is that about? The answer to all of this is humans don't always do what is best for them. The decisions they tend to make aren't based on whether or not something is true or even helpful. It's just what they do, because they're all morons. And I'm not judging, I'm a moron too. It's just good to recognize it sometimes.
9. Why do almost all feel compelled to do what's right by helping neighbors? Why is there a norm of reciprocity?
Well, I'll give you a reason for that is total horseshit. Because Christianity invented being nice to people. Like literally tons of Christbobs genuinely seem to think that their religion came along to a world that was non-stop murder and chaos. Children could barely take a step out of their homes before being decapitated by a horde of marauding pagans, who would then obviously immediately turn on each other once they'd run out of innocents to slaughter. No, dumbass. Humans are defined by their ability to cooperate en masse, and they have done so for way longer than any religion has been known to exist, especially yours. It is evolutionarily advantageous to the point where it's just kind of what they do now. For the most part, there are of course still assholes. Can't breed that out apparently.
10. What is our greater purpose?
Feeding me all of your whiskey. And beyond that, not much else, mate. And, you know, why do you even need one so desperately? Seriously, what is wrong with having a smaller, less great, but still very personal purpose? Is that just not enough for you? Do you think that you are so goddamn important that unless the literal creator of the universe gives you a specific task, you might as well not exist? I think you should get over yourself, mate.
And 11. Why is there evil in the world?
Because in a universe with no all-good, all-knowing, all-powerful being, you would absolutely expect there to be what humans describe as evil inside of it. Because duh, there is no one with the will and means to get rid of it. You should in fact be asking that question to yourself, while really taking into account what kind of God that you believe in, and how the hell does that make sense with a universe that functions the way it clearly does. And then you do as many mental backflips as you can to not give an answer that's worth a damn, because that's what you guys always do. Now, this video ends here, but she did a follow-up with 5 more questions that actually go a little bit more in-depth. Well, I assume so, since it's actually a few minutes longer with half the questions, but it might just be more idiotic nonsense. Let's find out.
Today, I'm going to follow up on questions that I've recently asked atheists with more questions.
I find it very funny that you didn't directly call this questions that atheists cannot answer, at least in the video itself. You couldn't help yourself but call it that in the title. Good job. Also, worth pointing out that in a way, she is right about it being impossible for us to answer in comment sections, because they're both blocked for these videos. So in that sense, she is right. Smart.
I have 5 additional questions. The first question is a little long, so hang on for a second and let me explain.
And it really is, so we've got to power through most of it, but I'll interject where necessary, because oh boy, does she make some idiotic claims along the way, hot damn. It's almost like increasing the complexity of the questions doesn't magically make them not stupid.
Despite the culture or era, sane humans have the innate sense of what's right and what's wrong, and we prefer to do what's right to help our fellow humans. No matter the major religion, we are all aware of the golden rule.
First off, the existence of insanity is an interesting observation. How can a person who has an external soul also be, forgive the pun, but in fact out of their minds? Can souls be mentally ill? That's a bit weird. It's almost like the person is the brain or something. And again, people like doing what's right because it's beneficial. A society of nothing but complete selfish assholes will inevitably collapse.
We prefer the humble over the braggarts, the selfless over the selfish, and the truthful over the liars.
Do you though? The amount of selfish, braggadocious liars that become incredibly popular with the religious is completely wild and puts paid to the notion that people prefer that. No, I think what you mean is they think they prefer that, but when presented with someone that they like for whatever reason, usually something to do with agreeing with them, they have an unfortunate tendency of overlooking those kinds of behaviors, because confirmation bias is a hell of a drug.
Cross-cultural scholars, such as Gert Hofstede, Fons Trompenaars, Robert House, and Shalom Schwartz, have found that societies vary in ways inconsistent with our innate morality. For example, not all societies are considered collective or cooperative. Collective societies are in Asia, Northern Europe, the Arab region, Africa, and South America. Highly individualistic societies are in Western Europe, the United States, and Canada. Many societies in the world are hedonistic, hierarchical, and have preferences against gender egalitarianism.
It is really hard to know what your actual point is supposed to be. People be different. Societies can become influenced by multiple things. And it all kind of points out the idea of some kind of innate morality being utterly nonsensical when you look at humanity at large. If everybody knew how to act right, there's no reason to believe that people as a whole would act any different from that right.
So, what we ought to do is often inconsistent with what we are doing. How do we know what we ought to do? How do we know it's right to help the needy, feed the poor, and act in a cooperative way? Evolutionary biologists have made observations to show that cooperative societies were better poised for survival, and over thousands of years in the distant past, groups have fared better than individuals.
I'm sure this is going to go something along the lines of, but you see, in more modern times, and by modern times I mean like a few thousand years, there have been successful societies that have a fair amount of individualism, while ignoring that there are so many other factors that would contribute to that situation, most of them being technological, and many of them being organizational. There is a big difference between a handful of people living in an isolated village and an actual frigging city. They simply are not the same.
Yet even in historical times, we have examples of highly individualist and highly successful societies, such as those in ancient Greece and Rome.
Holy shit, I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. This dumb human has confused individuals being recognized as their own people with lives and what have you, with everyone being out for themselves. Are you kidding me? The Greeks, and especially the Romans, were incredibly cooperative, at least within their own societies. You don't build continent-spanning empires by doing your own thing, you colossal dumbass. How the hell did you even begin to come to the implication that the Romans didn't help each other do things? God damn it. Stupid beliefs really are dangerous to brain functionality, aren't they?
Cooperative societies over the past couple of thousand years have not necessarily been better positioned for survival, because it has been shown that individualism is more beneficial in some ways.
Societies, like animals, survive not because there's one specific way that works in all circumstances, but because of fit. Survival of the fittest applies to a lot of things, including large groups of people. And if a certain way of organising is more effective in one time or place, that does not mean that it is the best for every time and place. Holy shit.
For example, a multitude of global studies have correlated gross domestic product with individualism. Individualism also corresponds with capitalism, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
You know, because of how much God loves money. And look, I think money is pretty cool. I like it a lot. Please give me some. But when you get modern Christy boys talking about wealth like it's a fucking biblical virtue, when Jesus, allegedly, according to his high-powered lawyers anyway, beat the shit out of a bunch of moneylenders, told people to give away all their stuff, and said that a rich man has a chance of getting into heaven than a camel passing through the eye of a needle. It just makes you wonder about them, you know? Plus, you know there's this whole thing about big companies cooperating too much? Demonstrating that literally nothing is as black and white simple as she wants it to be.
So why do even individualists know that we ought to help the weak, feed the poor, and be honest, just, empathetic, and loving? Why is it that all societies, regardless of their practices, know what we ought to do? Where do we get this moral compass?
You said it right here. Empathy. Most people have it to some degree because we've all been vulnerable. We have all been children. We have all seen kindness from others. Also, you are confusing, again and ironically, individualist societies with the individuals themselves, being strictly out for themselves. That is not how societies work. They are built from many people with many outlooks, not just some state-sanctioned way to be. You live in one of them. You must know this, right?
2. What accounts for the empty tomb and the resurrection appearances of Jesus? Roman pagans, Jews, and Christians in Jesus' time have all indicated that Jesus' empty tomb was found by second-class women. In fact, Paul stated that 500 people witnessed Jesus over the next 40 days after he rose from the dead. Many biblical and extra-biblical sources have indicated that early Christians preached illegally for the first few hundred years in support of Jesus. They preached for decades, braving beatings, stoning, crucifixion, beheadings, and some were burned to death.
So the women thing might sound convincing on the surface until you realise one thing. They would have thought of that at the time. Hey man, if we say that women saw it, they would have to believe it because we all know you can't trust those assholes. So why would we put it in? It's bloody genius, mate. No, it's obvious manipulation. And the 500 witnesses. Yeah, no, there was tell of 500 witnesses, but not actually from them. Just what people said happened. It's just worthless hearsay. Also, people die for things that aren't true all the time. You don't have to be crazy or a liar to become a martyr. You can just as easily, if not more so, be wrong.
3. If an atheist's position is that the universe is the product of chance and necessity instead of the product of intelligence, how can he or she explain the fact that the universe is structured rationally, logically, and with mathematical precision and predictability?
If is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because most of the atheists I know who have a reasonable understanding of how the universe formed, well, the idea of it being chance is absolute nonsense, because it wasn't. It's the product of systems that very much result in predictable patterns. Hardly something I or anyone would call chance.
4. If atheists adhere to the belief that the purpose of human life is merely to procreate and survive, is it possible to determine that human life has any more value than animal life, since animals share the same basic purpose?
In the grand scheme of the universe, absolutely not. Humans, like every animal we have ever seen, are just as susceptible to the whims of the omni-apathetic everything that could wipe them all out in a heartbeat. But to humans themselves, of course they value their own lives more than other animals, just as much as any other creature, if given the capacity to ponder such things, would likely value its own existence above all others. It's why God is a dude and not some other creature they care less about. As the saying goes, if horses had gods, their gods would be horses. But that doesn't mean that horse gods are real either.
5. Why have so many atheists determined that the life of a fetus in the mother's womb is less valuable than the life of his or her mother? What standard do they use to value human life?
That is as dumb a question as me asking you why many theists hold similar pro-choice positions. Because not all worldviews are identical even among the people who hold them. So how could I possibly tell you why someone else might hold any given position on a super specific topic? The fact that you're completely incapable of understanding that fact just makes me a little bit sad that your parents weren't among them. Boy!